Good afternoon. Welcome, and thank you for joining today's MLC's Masterclass as a part of our Future of Manufacturing project on leveraging AI for supply chain transformation. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping items. We have muted all participant lines to maintain sound quality throughout the session, but we always encourage you to ask questions by putting them in the chat or in the questions box. We'll do our best to address all of your questions either during the session or during the Q&A portion of the event. And lastly, before we start, this session is going to be recorded and will be sent via email within 48 hours of the session's conclusion, as well as on the Manufacturing Leadership Council website within approximately 5 to 7 business days. And now, please welcome MLC's Senior Director, Steve Moskowitz.
Thank you, Lauren, and welcome everybody to today's call. Before we start, just a little bit of a reminder about our Future of Manufacturing project. In the spring of 2021, the Manufacturing Leadership Council, a National Association of Manufacturers Strategic Communities, launched the Future of Manufacturing project, initially known as Manufacturing 2030. The project's main goal is to enable manufacturers to envision what manufacturing might look like in the future. Think 10, 20 plus years in the future. Realizing this goal requires thinking broadly about the context in which manufacturing will operate in the decades ahead, including population, demographic, and economic trends that will shape the industry. In addition, it entails understanding the direction and velocity of technological trends associated with Manufacturing 4.0, the industry's transition to the digital model of manufacturing. Perhaps most importantly, it involves identifying and understanding the challenges that all will face as the industry moves towards the next stage of Manufacturing 4.0. Armed with these understandings, manufacturers can better position and plan their long-term future and find ways to enhance their value, competitiveness, and contribution to society. And that brings us to today's session, leveraging AI for supply chain transformation. AI is revolutionizing manufacturing supply chains, particularly in warehousing and transportation. Pella, a leading provider of customized windows and doors, is on a transformation journey using AI. Join us today, as we talk with Pella about their future initiatives, marketplace trends, and the critical importance of data health. Working with Pella has been NTT Data, and they'll be joining us on the call as well to share their part of the story. With that, I would like to introduce you to our two speakers for today. First, we have Mark Schwartz, the Director of Operations and Logistics at Pella, and finally, Paul Chateau, the Director of Supply Chain Consulting at NTT Data North America. Gentlemen, welcome to the call. And there they are. Mark, we'll give you a chance to do a quick introduction and welcome.
Yeah, thank you guys. Very excited to be here today. My name is Mark Schwartz. I've been with Pella now since 2023. I oversee our logistics department and some of our operational manufacturing warehouses across the United States. And we have worked very closely with Paul and his team at NTT Data since I joined the organization, and excited to chat today.
Thanks. And Paul, you made it back just in time.
Yeah, like last minute technical difficulties there. No, I'm Paul Chateau. I'm a director with NTT Data in their supply chain and operations practice. I've been in the consulting world and the robotics implementation inside warehouses and distribution centers for about the last 14 years. So excited to be here today.
Great. Well, thank you, gentlemen. And as a reminder to those on the call, if you have questions, please pop them in the chat or the Q&A. We will do our best to get to them. Anything we don't get to today, we will answer in follow-up emails. Before we start, we did ask a question in the pre-registration about some of the challenges people face. Far and away, the number one was all of the above. Since we know everything can't be equally important, we kind of narrowed it down. So can you please start the first poll, Lauren? And if folks would just take a couple of seconds to answer what are the top challenges of these four around leveraging AI specifically for supply chain transformation. I love how the data goes so quick. Well, Fascinatingly, and not surprisingly, maintaining clean and accurate data is popping up as our number one challenge, which is going to lead into our conversation later. I will let it go for another second here. All right, that should be good. That gives us enough sense that that is really our top challenge. Integrating AI with other solutions is also a challenge, but that data is really going to be critical. Before we dive into that, let's start at kind of some of the broader trends, and we'll hide that from our screens here. Paul, as you look at this from kind of an NTT data perspective, what are some of the broader trends you see in the marketplace regarding AI in supply chain?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of trends out there that seem to come and go over the years. But where we're starting to see some really AI adoption in the supply chain, kind of on a more simple level, right? Going back to kind of machine learning, which is around for a little bit. We're seeing customers use kind of machine learning to analyze pictures of maybe orders that are going out the door to verify that they're correct. That's really a good starter case that we have helped clients with. And then also using kind of the power of AI to kind of analyze a broad set of documents. We worked with the client, as kind of noted in our manufacturing survey, kind of taking 1,000 engineering documents and making those conversationally accessible, kind of being via a chat GTP interface, really get employees to get answers more quickly and improve onboarding processes. But, as we kind of take what's happening now in the market and looking forward, we also do a supply chain survey along with Penn State and Penske. And what we found, the respondents there were looking at using AI in supply chain is transportation and route optimization, looking at reducing fuel consumption, improving delivery times, supply and demand forecasting to optimize inventory levels. And then we see in warehouses and distribution centers, kind of AI playing a critical role in automating operations, right? Using AI to improve tasks like picking, packing, and sorting. And really kind of anywhere there's large amounts of data is the place where AI can have a benefit. And the latest trend is agentic AI coming into the conversation more and more, using that data not just for insights, but also potentially to drive execution. So I kind of think that's really the big next step there is with agentic AI.
Excellent. Thank you. So Mark, over to you. As you've looked at what Pella's done over your time and over their journey, what are some of the insights you have about how you've been able to leverage AI across your supply chain?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. Like many of us, the first thing we've had to do is recognize that AI is evolving and changing very rapidly. So we've had to have a exploratory mindset around AI, and we're always trying to learn, and we're willing to take the time to understand what's going on to see how it can best help us as an organization. We're really looking at AI to help us enhance our decision-making process, improve visibility, and support our teams in being more productive. Our focus has been on learning and testing and then thinking about scale at this point. And we're always keeping an eye on our people and our customers when we're looking at this.
Great. I think that's an important part, which is not only taking the time to understand your own problems, but also to understand the technology and not just, throw out AI as a solution for everything. And so understanding which technologies are critical. One thing Paul mentioned was machine learning, and especially vision systems. What AI technologies are you able to leverage most as you've looked at this, and which ones seem to be the most important early on?
Yeah, so I think it's been really important for us to put a structure in place that we can agree upon what to roll out organizationally. And we've really looked at how we can improve productivity for our team members and our employees. And so we've really tried to show them aha moments on where AI and this technology can help folks. We've really had to spend a lot of time making sure people understand that this isn't to replace them, that is to help them and allow them to go faster.
Gotcha. That helps. I appreciate that. And let's talk a little bit more about that in terms of the implementation. One of the things that we saw in the survey was everybody said, hey, that data is critical, right? Getting clean data. So Paul, what are some of the challenges companies are facing to really maintain clean data, accurate, well-integrated data for these applications?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. Especially we've seen in our NTT data manufacturing study, right? Half of all manufacturers already begun assessing AI, and 9 and 10 will have done so by the end of the year. So that data is really the foundation for a lot of people on their journey within AI. One of the biggest issues that we see is kind of integrating AI within the existing systems, right? So data might be siloed, some might be on the cloud, some may be on-prem. It's getting that data together where an AI analysis could really be really effective. And what we're seeing in respondents from on the manufacturing side is using a lot of IoT data, right? Combining that with AI to kind of drive some better accuracy and relevance for those AI generated outputs. And with data, it is really important. In the supply chain and operations practice, we help clients with automation. And, I've seen personally in the past, right, if you're going with an automation system that is maybe using AI in the background to optimally slot products within a warehouse or within a robotic system, right, you can come to a screeching halt if your data is not correct on your dimensions, right? The system's telling you to put your product in one location, it's not going to fit. Well, you just stop picking until that issue is resolved. So, it could be a bit of a steep learning curve if your data is not in place. And we always kind of work with our clients on projects trying to highlight and identify, hey, where we see issues with data that, maybe have an immediate impact, but as you look to the future, you really need to kind of focus on that and get the data correct as you move forward here with AI.
That's a great point. I think the connection of data to physical space is
Yeah.
important. A lot of times we think of kind of AI in that virtual world, but being able to make that connection back to the physical, I think, can often help tell a better story.
Absolutely.
So Mark, you talked a little bit earlier about how Pella has found those aha cases, right? So what are some of those aha cases that you've seen? And then what do you see next, right? Where do you see those next big opportunities as you're trying to implement and scale?
Yeah, we've really been able to see aha moments with our team members that understand our business and understand processes, and we've been able to speed up things for them. And where a task may take a couple hours to generate, we've been able to speed that up with technology so that they can focus on customer interactions and have work on where there might be an actual issue versus generating the reporting. So we've really been able to show the importance of the data. And I agree with what Paul mentioned. Clean data is very important. And what we've also learned is it's important to make sure that you have the right people looking at your data, especially early on in the process, to make sure that the reporting is accurate and moving the organization in the direction you want to go. I think one thing people get really worried about when you say, hey, we want to put an AI tool in place is that, oh my gosh, you're trying to get rid of our department. That's not the case at all. And we've really been able to help let folks understand, hey, we're trying to use these things to make us better or more efficient in the way that we're looking at things. It also drives really good conversation at a higher level around how we want our organization, our data to be stored and used organizationally. Paul and his team has helped us with that to say, hey, this is what good looks like, and it forces good conversation.
So building off of that, one of the things we've talked before is the importance of governance, right? So saying we want good data, but really managing that data is going to be critical. So in our pre-call, we talked a little bit about data governance, but also AI governance. So can you talk a little bit about how Pella is managing first data governance and structured, and what are you doing around AI governance, and how are those related?
Sure. So we have, just like any organization, we have an IT department and we have data governance to ensure that our information is safe and secure, both on our properties and with the organizations that we're selling with and customers that we're working with. And we've actually made the decision to kind of work within those frameworks by having an AI governance to look at best practices and make sure that we have buy-in all across the organization and make sure that we are setting our team up to be successful as we go through an AI journey to see where we can use the technology. So our department has been able to help us work together to make sure that we're putting the right technology at the fingertips of our teams.
And within that AI governance, is this within the IT group, or is this more broad now across, including the operations and supply chain teams? Who is owning your AI governance strategy?
Yep, we have cross-functional teams working together to make sure that we're thinking about the entire business, not just AI or IT or not just manufacturing. We want to make sure we're working together, so we cross collaborate cross functionally.
Great, appreciate that. Paul, what have you seen around this governance challenge?
Yeah, I think what Mark mentioned, having it as cross-functional, I think that's really the key, right? Because you're going to get the use cases kind of driven from operations, but maybe controlled by IT. So having that cross collaboration, I think, is really important.
Great. Before we jump into kind of the next polling question, just want to go back for a second to the implementation. One of the things that I think Mark, you'd said was some of these aha cases. Are you finding those aha cases and your initial use cases to be tied to machine learning and vision systems that Paul had mentioned, or are you starting to use Gen AI? Where are you seeing from an AI perspective, which is the technology that is kind of the leader right now?
Yeah, I would say that we're seeing a lot of success in like our logistics department, where we're using technology around routing and making sure that we're being efficient with our routing decisions. And then we're trying to use cases with our leadership team to get them excited about the technology and show how we can improve their day-to-days. So there's a little bit of everything going on right now at Pella. And transportation has been our biggest win at this point.
Gotcha. And that's really again around that machine learning and data and route optimization, et cetera.
Yep.
Okay, great. So Lauren, can you open up the second polling question, please? This is around back to really staying with workforce. How is your workforce currently leveraging AI across the supply chain? And again, looking for one answer. We're not allowing this multiple choice anymore. And if you're not yet using it, where do you want to see it being used? Okay, let it go for another. There we go. That's probably good enough. So what we're seeing is integrating solutions to enhance data accuracy, decision making, critical, optimizing inventory management. At a lower level is predictive maintenance, and then AI-driven, AI-enabled robots and automated warehousing are the other opportunities. Paul, you've done obviously NTT Data has done surveys. Does this align with what you're seeing across the industry?
Yeah,
And
I think
various surprises that you've seen.
Yeah, no, I think those responses kind of align. Again, anywhere where there's a lot of data, right? So kind of things with predictive maintenance or inventory, you have a lot of data you can analyze to help and maybe improve forecasts. So that kind of makes a lot of sense to me, those responses there.
And Mark, as you kind of look at what you're doing within Pella, where does this fit? Does this kind of align with what you're seeing as well? Or are there other areas, for example, AI-driven robots within your logistics? Are you starting to see that pick up, or is this really kind of similar to what you've seen?
I'm smiling because when we did some of these surveys with Paul, we were probably a smorgasbord all over the place. And what I would say is it's really critical to make sure that you put a plan in place. And NTT Data was able to help us understand what that looks like. And you've got to put the right foundation and have the right building blocks to be able to do all these things on this screen. So it's not as simple as, hey, we want to go put robotics in the warehouse. We want to go put AI with our transportation. You can't boil the ocean. You can't do everything at once. You have to be very strategic at what you want to focus on. And for us, it was very helpful to have Paul and the NTT team work with us and kind of give us directions that we could, as an organization, figure out where we want to go and what that looks like. So this feels very accurate.
Familiar.
And everyone is probably asking for everything all at once. And that goes back to the governance of making sure that you have a cross-functional team in place, working together to put the right steps in place. And as you think about how you want to implement some of this type of technology, I think it's really important to go after an area where you can see quick wins or improvement right away. And you start getting those early adapters to start adapting to these type of changes. And then they can help buy tie in with the rest of the organization and help those that are a little leery or unsure of using technology like AI. So I think that's important to think about as well.
Great. That's a great example. I think one of the things that I took from that is, it's important to have a business case that's going to drive value. But the other two things you pointed out were speed and being able to show quick wins. But probably one of the most important is having a team that's willing to adopt, right? Well, having a team early on that's willing to do this. Otherwise, you end up with a case where the team is fighting you the whole way. So I think that's great. So let's kind of dive in there a little bit more. So you have a team, you say, let's go do this. Mark, what have you done to make sure that workforce is really equipped with the right skills to work with AI and generative AI and all these new tools that are coming out? How have you done this training and skill development?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I would call out is that we treat AI just like any other type of project that we would roll out. So we have a project plan, we have a scope to what we want to do, we have goals, and we have checkpoints and things of that nature. And then there's educating and letting the team or the group that you're working with understand what's going on, why we're making the change. And there's a lot of questions early on saying, hey, what's going on? Again, things are changing so fast that you may have one answer on Monday and Tuesday there's another tool out there. So you've got to be adapting quickly and willing to handle that type of change. So it can feel a little different when you're thinking about technology changes like this. But I would say the biggest thing is it's not just about technology, it's also a cultural shift. And so it's important to treat it like any other process that you've rolled out within your organization that has gone successful. I would follow that playbook versus trying to just roll something out very quickly.
So on that note, I'm going to throw you a curveball here. Does Pella have a well-structured project management and change management processes that you were able to leverage and build off of?
Yeah, I would like to say yes.
Good.
I think there's areas we can always get better, but we definitely have a structure and a format that the team is used to seeing when we roll things out or when we change things. So we're intentional on how we want to bring this information to our teams and our leaders to make sure that we're providing the opportunity for people to ask questions and make sure everyone understands where we're going. So you really got to build again that foundation and really go slow before you can go fast.
Gotcha. So Paul, back to you, kind of a similar question. Was you worked with Pella and as you've seen across other companies, how can manufacturers really prepare their workforce? Are there other things that they should be doing to get ready for this?
Yeah, I think Mark hit on a lot of good points there. Maybe just to reiterate, like it is that change management and creating that culture of kind of curiosity for employees where they feel comfortable using the tools and they're well educated on what's maybe coming and how this tool, again, going back to not replace, but how that tool is going to benefit them moving forward. So as you kind of bring them along in that journey, change management is really critical to make sure they understand the value it adds. And, in the broader market, kind of echoing what Mark said, in our supply chain survey, there's 9 out of 10 respondents stated that AI is not going to replace, but rather assist workers in their decision making. So I think it's really just kind of boils down to communication and make sure you're accounting for that human factor as kind of companies go along this AI journey.
So one of the things we've seen as well is in the news, when people say AI, they typically are talking about generative AI. But as we've seen in this conversation, there's a whole other suite of AI tools that in manufacturing are often more important. Yet
Yep.
people are still playing with generative AI, or people in their personal lives are playing all the time. So how can manufacturers support and kind of take advantage of the fact that people are doing this on their own and bring it into their workforce in a safe way, specifically around generative AI? I'll throw that to you for first, Paul.
Yeah, no, I think it's actually, good that people are exploring this on their own, right? Even my kids, I'm kind of showing them some of the new features and they're getting kind of used to what AI could do, right? But, then they can relate back to kind of the experience in the workplace, right? Where maybe it's a little bit more structured and not just for kind of making funny images and things like that, but kind of gives a foundation of maybe what the capabilities are. So even if companies are starting kind of on that using it for machine learning, defined applications. People can be thinking about, well, maybe how I can analyze this in the future, and some of that maybe personal exploration that people are doing kind of help them along that journey as well.
And so Mark, within Pella, one of the challenges bringing generative AI into companies is protecting your data. Has Pella started to explore generative AI specifically? And how are you doing that in a controlled way?
Yeah, we've been very intentional in how we want to use our data and what we want to share out and how we want to protect that information. So we have put a lot of thought behind that, and to be able to make sure that we're using the right information. But I think what is also important there is the mindset shift or the cultural change that you want to allow your team members to bring to the table, your supervisors to bring, to have an ability to bring up ideas of, hey, I think this could work. I'm looking at this at home. How can I use this in the workforce? So it's important that you're allowing your early adapters to adapt and attempt to try new things. So it's going to feel very different than what a typical project may feel like, just based on all the different options that are out there. So I think it's very important when you think about generative AI to understand what your organization is comfortable with, what type of programs you want to be associated with, and then establish those guidelines and get those out to the team and be very transparent behind the why of who you're selecting to work with or share information with. And then I think it's also important that your IT department does the right research to understand where this information could go. There's a lot out there, so I think it's really important to make sure that your teams are thinking about all the different curveballs that are out there. And then I would throw out there an NTT data is going to be a great resource that helps kind of navigate those curveballs and gives you ways to think about things. So I would tell you, we might be looking left, and Paul says, hey, you also need to look right or up or down. And so I think, making sure that you're bringing the right people along in the journey is mission critical.
That's great. So a question came up in the chat while we're on generative AI. Do you have any specific examples, either Mark or Paul, from broader industry, where you've actually seen generative AI used within manufacturing? And what are some of the hurdles other than data protection you've seen? So either Mark, if you've seen specific examples within the company with generative AI, or Paul more broadly.
We have seen generative AI. I think the biggest thing is your data integrity is mission critical, and we're gonna talk about some of these things over and over. But to really be able to do these, to use this type of technology, you have to have the right foundation in place. And so that good data in is going to be good data out. Bad data in is going to be bad data out. So really establishing and setting those parameters, and then setting those expectations with your team as you're trying to build reporting out is really critical. So you may try and clean up a report, but it's generating bad data. It's going to give you bad data. And so you've got to make sure the team understands what good looks like. And that's why it's critical. When we talked earlier, these tools are speeding up your good employees. They're making your good team go faster. Your underperformers are going to underperform faster. So you need to be very careful on how you use this and roll this out, and make sure that you guys have alignment or checking your data points and sources to make sure it's accurate before you publish it. It takes time to use generative AI, and I think there's myths out there that people think, oh, I've got a meeting, I'm going to type a quick note into something and then get an answer. Prompting it takes a while to prompt, and there's building to it, and you have to go back and forth. Now, once you establish the prompt, then you can keep it, save it, whatever. But it takes time to get stuff set up correctly. No matter what industry you're in, if you want to use generative AI, it takes a lot of time. And then I think it's also important to understand that this is not thinking on its own. This is just spitting out data that is already out there, whether it be in the internet, whether it be in your organization's database, that it's just spitting back out. So it's really important to understand where you're pulling from, what you're asking it to pull, and make sure that you have those things set up. So when you think about, hey, how do I want to roll this out? It's really important to make sure you understand what you're asking these systems to do, and then play with it. And when I say play with it, I think it's important to leverage. You have to be willing to leverage third-party resources at times to get help to understand what you're missing or not missing, or you need someone on your IT or whatever governance team that's super detailed into this, really helping say, hey, these are the changes that are coming, this is how it should work, and you'll be in a much better spot than if you just say, hey, we want to use generative AI, go. Your team's going to get confused. They're going to look at it and go, this is garbage, and then you're done.
Yeah.
You get one shot at it, and you need to make sure you have a good plan.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Maybe
Paul.
just echoing off some of Mark's comments there, right? So I think, again, it's going off data that you may have. I go back to that case study I mentioned before where we've used engineering documents from a company to make it accessible to the employees, right? We still got to make sure those engineering documents, you have the correct version, right? The latest and greatest. Otherwise, you're going to get those false outputs. So I think that's really critical. As companies are using this, there's still that kind of check that needs to be done to make sure that foundation is still correct. You still have the right data in place.
Gotcha. And I think you had talked about, the ability to use it to do the, thousands of documents and then, engineering and process documents to make it more conversational.
Yep.
One of the other things that we've seen with a prior conversation was to use AI to actually look for where those documents are inconsistent, right? When you have 1,000 documents that are all somewhat, on similar processes, you can use AI to actually find those inconsistencies to improve your processes. And so even though a lot of people are using it just for that retrieval, it can be used to drive some process improvement as well.
Absolutely.
So kind of final thoughts here as we kind of wrap up over the next few minutes or 10 minutes or so. What's coming next? So Paul, we'll start with you. Where do you see AI going? You talked about agentic AI. What is this going to mean over the next 3 to 5 years? AI, it's happening so quickly. So
Yeah.
even though the future of manufacturing, we talk 10 years, let's stick with it kind of 2 to 5 years. So what's happening in the AI world and how should we be approaching this? What should we be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think that's even at the 2 to 5 year range. I still think that's a tricky one, right? Because if you asked me 5 years ago, how do I see AI in supply chain? I might say not in my lifetime, right? But it's here, it's being used. So, what exactly the next 3 to 5 years look like, can't really say. But I think what we'll see the continued use of AI to kind of get rid of those repetitive tasks. Whether it's on the manufacturing floor or if it's office tasks to get those, with agentic AI, some of those repetitive tasks can just be automatically done by AI. And I think that's where one of the biggest drivers that we're going to see. And I think it's really focused for companies to be focused on getting ready for those type of changes, again, with a good solid foundation of data. It's going to be really critical because as agentic AI kind of moves forward, and it's going to execute on those data, right? We don't want to kind of have it run away on bad data, making bad decisions, right? And either way, I think it's important for companies to get in the game, try. Maybe at first you don't see maybe the value realization, but you're gonna kind of iterate that process and hopefully unleash kind of the full potential of AI and agentic AI as you kind of move forward. So I think it's really critical just to kind of get started from a company's journey perspective within the next couple of years or the next couple of months.
Gotcha. And Mark, from your experience at Pella, what advice would you give manufacturers who are either just starting, trying to figure this out, and they have, people screaming, just go do it? How should they get started? What are the next steps for them?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is that uh, organiz organizations like Meta and other big companies, Microsoft, are going to continue to invest in AI. So there's going to be continued amounts of money poured into this over the next 3 to 5 years. So the landscape is going to be ever changing. And I think as you think about that as an organization, you've got to decide where you want to play in the game and where you feel comfortable learning and going through that process. So I think what I would tell you is, as people are saying, jump in and go, I think it's really important to just take a deep breath, slow down, and not get confused with all of the outside news articles you hear about AI, and really treat it just like any other project that you would treat within your organization, and establish the same rules, goals, objectives that you would on any other project to be able to get what you want out of AI. It may feel different and it may look different than a typical project because some of it may be virtual or digital, but I think those are the key foundations that I would tell an organization, hey, if you're looking at doing this, you've got to just treat it like a normal project and make sure that you have buy-in from the top down. I think you get one or two shots at this at an organizational level to roll these type of things out, and it's really important that you're intentional on how you want to think about using generative AI and other tools that are out there. I also would tell you, as an organization, you gotta have a curious mind, and you've got to be willing to learn and know that in this environment it's going to feel very different. We all in manufacturing, we want repetition and we want everything to be exactly the same every 4 hours. That's a perfect world, right? Groundhog Day with Bill Murray is the best manufacturing movie ever, and this is polar opposite because things are changing every 4 hours. So this is a complete mind shift, and you've got to make sure that your team is going to feel a different way dealing with changes, and could get frustrated at times, and you've got to handle that change accordingly, and let the team learn as you're going through that process.
That's great points. I think one of the things I took from what you're saying, and this is reminding me of when I was first um, uh, working in manufacturing and doing continuous improvement projects. The goal was always you had to go slow to go fast, and I think that's important. Right, take the time to learn, take the time to kind of get a lay of the land before you dive in and start doing things. And too often companies dive in and start just doing things for the sake of saying, "Hey, we're doing AI." And Mark, you're good reminders that don't just jump in, kind of think first and pick the right projects and the right activities. The other thing you talked about, and the reason that you're here with Paul, is don't do it alone, right? Things are changing so quickly. The idea that any manufacturer will also be an AI expert is kind of crazy. And finding those right partners, such as NTD Data, is going to be vital as you move forward. So I think those were really two things I took away. There's another question in the chat here. At a broad level, right? If I'm a manufacturer early on and I'm feeling overwhelmed, how do I get started? Right? Is it, as you said, Mark, to slow down and think and learn? Is it to prioritize? How should they get started to pick those early use cases to kind of figure out what to do? Any kind of quick hits to say, here's a good way to get started if you're just trying to figure this out and feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, so my initial thought here, I don't know the size of the organization that's asking this, and I don't know the funding that is available to you, but I think a really good pressure test would be to say, hey, I come back and the organization says, Mark, you need to put AI in manufacturing. I think a really good pressure test would be to come back and say, great, I want to build a roadmap with an NTT data, and that is going to show you the commitment level from the organization and show you where how serious the organization is about this. Is this a flavor of the week type request, or is this a true, we want to culturally change things? So I think if you're at a point where you're feeling that overwhelmed, I think it would make a lot of sense to step back and you say, hey, Paul, how can we build this together? And they can help put a roadmap in place. If you're past that and you have an IT department in place and your IT team is already kind of dabbling this or starting to talk about it, I think it's really partnering cross-functionally to understand what everyone thinks is out there, and then understanding how you could potentially use what is available to improve your processes within your organization. And when I think about that, I think it goes back to making sure that there's alignment on what data needs to be used, and how it can be used correctly to improve a process. And the last thing I would say is, instead of trying to use AI everywhere, I would use it in one place. So if it's, hey, we're going to collect all of our blueprints, I think Paul mentioned that. That's a great starting point. And so use something that the team can wrap their head around and get a win under your belt before you try to do different things.
That's a great point. Paul, anything to add there?
Yeah, no, I think Mark hit it there, is that as you build that roadmap, get those defined use cases where there's a high probability of success, the correct data foundation, and use that, whether it's engineering documents or kind of checking orders before they go out the door and assistance to an operator. Those are the places to start on your roadmap before you go into more, say, the cutting edge AI where it's making decisions for you, right? You need to get the foundation first.
So I appreciate those answers. One of the comments in the chat was one main challenge is ensuring AI initiatives drive strategic business value and benefits. So as you look at your AI initiatives, and Paul, we'll start with you, as companies are looking, how do you measure that ROI? And how do you really show that the AI itself is going to support it? Is there a little bit of trust there? How do you
Yeah,
do that?
it's a good question, right? Calculating that ROI might be a little bit difficult, but I think you do need to do it, right? To see that there's value there that you're providing. And whether it's, hey, this task used to take 3 hours and now it takes 1 hour with the assistance of AI, start building that foundation so that there's value going back to the company. I think it's difficult sometimes to do it, but set your starting point, where you want to get to, and measure yourself against that is critical.
Gotcha. And then Mark, you've talked about this already, right? Treat it like any other project. Every project has to have those key goals, and how do you make sure that's in place? Looking here, so an interesting one in the chat here. One of the things that we're starting to see come up in conversation around data health and data management is unified namespace. So Mark, I don't know if you guys are starting to look at unified namespace, but Paul, we'll start with you again. What is the relevance and the relationship of building a unified namespace to getting data ready for AI?
Yeah, I mean, having data kind of consistent across the
And
organization.
right, can you maybe define unified namespace for those who aren't familiar with it? Put you on the spot a little more.
Yeah, and at least the way I understand it is just kind of, hey, the same data structure across, whether it's multiple systems, that you can have a clear reference back and forth, right? That's the way I kind of interpret it. And it is critical, right? Because you're going to have data from different systems coming in to analyze. And if there is no connection there, it's going to be a bit of a challenge.
Gotcha. And Mark, are you starting to play with unified namespace, and how does that fit into your data governance work?
Yeah, so I would say, to me, UNS isn't AI correlated. You need UNS to be successful, to be able to operate and take in orders and get orders out in a timely, organized manner. So I think having the right unified space and having a plan and having the right IT backbones and like infrastructure in place is critical. But to me, I don't tie that just to AI. I tie that to having a good manufacturing mindset and facility. So to answer my answer, I guess, to that would be yes, you need UNS to be able to use AI. Now, and Paul could probably go into this better than I, but you technically could probably build prompts and things to pull from different places to get things in the same spot. So there are ways around using AI to get information somewhat streamlined, but really all you're doing is unifying the information to get the data out. So my answer would be yes, you need to be thinking about that, but that to me is a bigger conversation than just AI.
Gotcha. Yeah, and oftentimes we're seeing a unified namespace having to exist across your supply chain, including your suppliers and your customers, and becomes a big challenge. And I think we'll actually have a call on that within the MLC later this year, talking about unified namespace and how to think about that. So in our final couple minutes here, any other comments or questions from the chat, please enter them. If not, Mark, I'll give you a final word, a couple of final thoughts, and then Paul, I'll do
Yeah,
the same for you.
Yeah, I appreciate the time today. To me, as I think about AI and where this is going, you got to have a curious mindset. You've got to be willing to look at stuff a little bit differently. And then you got to be able to, as an organization, admit what you don't know and get help and leverage the entities of the world. They can put you in the right spot and put you in the right direction. So it was great chatting with everyone today.
Great. Paul?
No, and thanks for the conversation, Steve and Mark. I enjoyed it. And I think, yeah, just again, just reiterate, maybe it comes down to the human factor, right? Making sure that they're brought along on that journey, I think is really critical. And then getting that data health, in line to be ready to take the next steps, is really the foundation moving forward.
Gotcha. Well, gentlemen, thank you for the time. We have a few final slides for those on the call here, so can show those, and then we will. And so, as a reminder, this was our Future of Manufacturing project. A couple of other things going on with the Future of Manufacturing project. We just released Shaping the AI-powered Factory of the Future survey. This is available on the MLC website. You'll also get a link to the survey in a follow-on email. It gives a lot of perspective, some of which we talked about today, but more broadly around what is the role of AI moving forward and how do we start to prepare for it. Additionally, within the MLC, we have some upcoming plant tours. We have, on the next page, there we go, a United Scrap Metal Tour outside of Chicago, really about enabling technologies to drive sustainability improvements in manufacturing. Registration is open now. We have at least 2 more plant tours coming. They'll be announced in the coming weeks. So please kind of bookmark the plant tours link at the bottom there to keep abreast of follow-on plant tours. Finally, registration is still open for Rethink. This is coming in 11 days down in Marco Island, Florida. It's a great event where we'll be talking about all that's happening in Manufacturing 4.0 today, including our gala presentation for the Manufacturing Leadership Awards. It's a fantastic event to network, to learn, to partner, and to grow. Tomorrow, there will be a virtual registration for those who cannot attend in person. So be on the lookout for an email from the MLC with more information about virtual registration if you cannot attend and join us in person. To all of our participants, thank you for joining us. Thank you to our panelists, Mark and Paul. I really appreciate your insights, your perspectives, and the conversation. Thank you to the audience for your questions. It was a great discussion. If you have additional questions or wish to connect with our speakers, please reach out to mlcinfo@nam.org, and we will connect you with the right people. Finally, you will be getting an email with all of this information, all the links, and some additional information from NTT Data and the MLC to help you on your journey forward. Thank you. Have a great day and hope to see you all in Florida.